My name is Misty. I am 28 years old and a passionate marketing professional with 6 years of experience in the industry. Landing this new job at Elite Marketing Solutions was supposed to be my big break, a stepping stone to the career I had always dreamed of. Little did I know that my new boss, Mr. Richardson, would turn my professional dream into a nightmare with one shocking act of violence. When he slapped me across the face for refusing to walk his dog, I never imagined how those next 17 minutes would completely transform my life. Before I continue this shocking story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below and hit that like button if you have ever had to deal with a toxic boss. Trust me, what happened next will make your jaw drop. I had always been passionate about marketing. Since college, I was the one classmates came to for creative campaign ideas and persuasive copy. After graduation, I worked at a smaller agency called Creative Minds Marketing for 5 years, slowly climbing the ladder from junior copywriter to senior marketing strategist. I loved my job there, but unfortunately the company fell on hard times during an economic downturn. With tears in his eyes, my previous boss had to lay off 30% of the staff, including me. It was devastating, but I understood it was a business decision, not a personal one. For 3 months, I sent out dozens of applications every week. The job market was tough, and I was beginning to lose hope when I received an email from Elite Marketing Solutions, one of the most prestigious agencies in the city. They wanted to interview me for a position as a marketing project manager. I could hardly believe my luck. Elite handled accounts for Fortune 500 companies and was known for its innovative campaigns and generous compensation packages. The interview process was rigorous, consisting of 3 rounds with different team members and executives. When I received the call offering me the position with a salary 20% higher than my previous job, I nearly screamed with excitement. My parents were thrilled. My friends threw me a small celebration party, and I felt like all my hard work had finally paid off. My first week at Elite was everything I had hoped for. The office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city skyline. My desk was equipped with the latest technology, and I even had a small budget to personalize my workspace. The company culture seemed progressive with flexible working hours, a well-stocked break room, and regular team-building activities. Jasmine, my cubicle neighbor, quickly became my first friend at the company. She had been at Elite for 3 years and showed me the ropes from how to use the complicated coffee machine to the unwritten rules of company politics. "You will love it here," Jasmine assured me during lunch on my 3rd day. "The clients are top-notch, the creative team is brilliant, and the benefits are amazing. Just—" She hesitated, lowering her voice, try to stay on Mr. Richardson's good side. Mr. Richardson was the newly appointed executive director of client services and my direct supervisor. He had been brought in from a competitor agency just 2 months before I joined, with a reputation for turning struggling departments into profit centers. During my first week, I had only brief interactions with him, mostly in team meetings where he seemed professional if somewhat demanding. "What do you mean?" I asked Jasmine, noticing her sudden change in tone. "Nothing serious," she backtracked. "He just has high standards. Perfectionistic, you know, but he gets results, so the higher-ups love him." I should have paid more attention to the way her eyes darted around when she spoke about him, or how she quickly changed the subject. But I was too caught up in the excitement of my new role, too grateful for the opportunity to notice these subtle red flags. The first small indication that something might be off came during my 2nd week. I had stayed late to finish a client proposal, wanting to impress my new team with my dedication. As I was gathering my things to leave around 7:30 in the evening, Mr. Richardson stopped by my desk. "Leaving already?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "I just finished the Miller proposal," I said, feeling oddly defensive despite having worked nearly 2 hours past my scheduled time. Was his only response, followed by a slight frown before he walked away. The next morning, he returned the proposal with so many red marks it looked like it was bleeding. Many of the corrections were purely stylistic preferences, with no substantive improvement, and some directly contradicted the client brief I had been given. Still, I diligently made all the changes, chalking it up to a new boss with particular preferences I needed to learn. As the days passed, I began to notice other concerning behaviors. Mr. Richardson would publicly praise certain team members while harshly criticizing others for minor mistakes. He seemed to enjoy creating competition among the staff, often mentioning how easily replaceable everyone was in the current job market. His mood could shift dramatically from charming and charismatic in client meetings to cold and cutting once the clients left. By the end of my second week, the office atmosphere had grown noticeably tense whenever Mr. Richardson was present. People spoke in hushed tones, triple-checked their work before submitting anything to him, and some even scheduled their lunch breaks to avoid being in the office when he typically did his rounds. I tried to remain positive. Every workplace had its challenges, I told myself. Mr. Richardson might be demanding, but perhaps that was the price of working at such a prestigious agency. I convinced myself that if I just worked hard enough, smart enough, I could avoid becoming a target of his displeasure. That illusion was shattered during my third week on a Tuesday that began like any other day. I had arrived early to prepare for an important client meeting scheduled for 1:30 in the afternoon. This was my first opportunity to present directly to a major client, and I had spent the entire previous evening perfecting my presentation. The client, a luxury skincare brand, had the potential to become one of our biggest accounts, and I was determined to make a good impression. Around 11 o'clock, Mr. Richardson called me into his office. I grabbed my notebook, assuming he wanted to review the presentation one final time. "Close the door," he instructed as I entered. His office was minimalist and immaculate, with several industry awards prominently displayed on a shelf behind his desk. A framed photo of a German Shepherd was the only personal touch in the otherwise sterile space. "Misty," he said, not looking up from his computer, "I need you to do something for me." Of course, I replied, eagerly ready to take on whatever task would help me succeed in my new role. What he said next would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. That Tuesday morning had started with such promise. I had woken up early, chosen my most professional outfit, a navy blue pantsuit with a cream blouse, and even stopped for a proper breakfast instead of my usual granola bar at my desk. Today was important, my first major client presentation, and I wanted everything to be perfect. The office was relatively quiet when I arrived at 7:30, allowing me nearly 2 uninterrupted hours to finalize my presentation before the daily team huddle at 9:30. I had just put the finishing touches on my slides when Mr. Richardson arrived earlier than his usual 10 o'clock appearance. I noticed immediately that something was off. His typically perfectly pressed suit was slightly rumpled, his expression tense. He barked at the receptionist for not having his coffee ready despite being an hour earlier than expected, and slammed his office door loud enough for everyone in the open office to hear. "What is up with him today?" I whispered to Jasmine when she arrived. She glanced nervously at his closed door. "I heard his divorce was finalized yesterday. He is always worse when there is personal stuff going on." Throughout the morning, Mr. Richardson's mood continued to deteriorate. In our team meeting, he criticized every idea presented, dismissed months of work on a campaign as amateur, and made our newest team member nearly cry with his harsh feedback on her market research. By 11 o'clock, everyone was walking on eggshells, communicating in whispers and trying to become invisible. When my desk phone rang and I saw it was his extension, my stomach dropped. "He wants to see me," I told Jasmine, who gave me a sympathetic look. "Just agree with whatever he says," she advised. "This is not a day to stand your ground." I squared my shoulders, took a deep breath, and headed to his office, notebook in hand. When I closed the door behind me, as instructed, the silence was thick with tension. "Misty," he finally said without looking up from his computer, "I need you to do something for me." "Of course," I replied, pen poised over my notebook, assuming it was a work assignment. He finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "My dog walker called in sick, and I need someone to take Rex out during lunch. You will need to pick up my keys from reception, go to my apartment, and walk him for at least 30 minutes. I blinked, momentarily confused. This was not a work assignment, but a personal errand, and one that would directly conflict with my client meeting. I am sorry, Mr. Richardson, but I have the Luxe skincare presentation at 1:30. I reminded him carefully. I have been preparing all week for it. His expression darkened. "This will not take long. My apartment is only 10 blocks from here." "But the presentation," I began, my voice faltering under his increasingly hostile glare. "Are you refusing to help me?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I took a deep breath and tried to be as diplomatic as possible. "I am not refusing to help. I just cannot miss this client meeting. Perhaps someone from administration could help." Or I could find another team member who does not have a conflict this afternoon. Walk my dog. It was no longer a request but a direct order, each word enunciated slowly as he rose from his chair. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with my resolve. I cannot miss this presentation. I would be happy to help another day when I do not have a client commitment. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to register it. Mr. Richardson stepped around his desk, raised his hand, and slapped me hard across my left cheek. The sound cracked through the office like a whip, and my head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. For a moment, neither of us moved. I stood frozen in shock, my cheek burning, my mind unable to process what had just happened. Mr. Richardson looked momentarily surprised by his own action, but his expression quickly hardened again. Now get out and reconsider your priorities if you want to keep this job, he said coldly. Hot tears filled my eyes, not from the physical pain, though my cheek stung sharply, but from the utter humiliation and violation. I turned without a word and walked out of his office on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The open office layout meant that at least a dozen colleagues had heard the slap and witnessed me emerging from his office with a reddened cheek and tears streaming down my face. Some quickly averted their eyes, pretending to be engrossed in their work. Others looked on with sympathy but made no move to help. Jasmine half rose from her chair, her face a mask of horror, but I shook my head slightly and made a beeline for the bathroom. Once inside, I locked myself in a stall and pressed my hand against my mouth to muffle the sobs that threatened to escape. My cheek throbbed, and when I finally emerged to look in the mirror, I could see the distinct outline of fingers forming on my skin. My mind raced with conflicting thoughts and emotions. I needed this job. The job market was tough. I had bills to pay, student loans looming, but no job was worth this level of abuse and humiliation. Yet what could I do? It would be his word against mine, and he was a highly regarded executive while I was just a new hire still on probation. As these thoughts tumbled through my mind, a memory surfaced of my mother's voice. Never let anyone treat you as less than the valuable human being you are. She had repeated this mantra throughout my childhood, especially after I had been bullied in middle school and afraid to tell anyone. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, at the red mark on my cheek, at the mascara streaking down my face. Who was this person looking back at me? Was I really going to allow myself to be physically assaulted at my workplace and do nothing about it? Was any job, any paycheck worth sacrificing my dignity and safety? As the initial shock began to wear off, another emotion began to rise within me: anger. Pure righteous anger. No one had the right to put their hands on me regardless of their position or power. What Mr. Richardson had done was not only morally reprehensible but illegal. I was not going to let him get away with it. I just needed a few minutes to figure out exactly what to do next. The bathroom clock showed 11:23 when I locked myself in the stall. 17 minutes. That was all it would take to completely transform my perspective and my future. As I sat there trying to calm my breathing, memories from throughout my life began to flash through my mind. The time in 4th grade when a boy kept pulling my hair, and I was too afraid to tell the teacher. My first boyfriend in high school, who would jokingly put me down in front of his friends, and I laughed along to avoid making a scene. The professor in college who made inappropriate comments about my appearance, and I dropped his class rather than report him. The pattern was clear and devastating. For years I had chosen silence and avoidance over confrontation, prioritizing peace and others' comfort over my own dignity. Not this time, I whispered to my reflection. Not anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my sister Kelly, calling for our usual Tuesday check-in. I almost ignored it, not wanting her to hear me in this state, but something compelled me to answer. Hey, what is up? I tried to sound normal, but my voice cracked. Misty, what is wrong? Kelly's concerned voice came through immediately. Before I could stop myself, everything poured out: the full story of Mr. Richardson, the dog-walking demand, and the slap that still burned on my cheek. He did. What? Kelly's voice rose in outrage. Misty, that is assault. That is illegal. You need to report him right now. But I just started this job, I protested weakly. What if no one believes me? What if I get fired? Then you document everything and sue their asses, Kelly said firmly. She had always been the more outspoken of us, a trait I had sometimes envied. Listen to me, Misty. If you let this slide, two things will happen. He will do it again to you, and he will do it to someone else. Is that what you want? Her words hit me like a second slap, but this one was clarifying rather than humiliating. She was right. This was bigger than just me and my job. This was about standing up against abuse of power and physical violence in the workplace. You are right, I said, a new resolve strengthening my voice. I need to report this. That is my sister, Kelly said proudly. Call me after. I love you. After hanging up, I took a deep breath and began to think strategically. First, I needed to document everything while it was fresh. I opened the Notes app on my phone and recorded exactly what had happened, including the time, location, exact words exchanged, and the names of potential witnesses who might have heard or seen something. Next, I carefully photographed my cheek where the red mark was now clearly visible. I took several photos from different angles, making sure the bathroom's fluorescent lighting clearly showed the developing bruise. Then I pulled up the company handbook on my phone and quickly found the section on workplace harassment and violence. The policy was clear: Elite Marketing Solutions has zero tolerance for any form of physical violence, threats, or intimidation in the workplace. The procedure outlined that incidents should be reported immediately to Human Resources, or, if involving a direct supervisor, to the HR director specifically. I also did a quick search about workplace assault laws in our state, confirming what I already suspected. What Mr. Richardson had done was not only a violation of company policy but a criminal offense. With trembling fingers, I sent a brief email to my personal account documenting what had happened, attaching the photos of my face and relevant sections of the company policy. This would establish a timestamp and ensure I had access to this evidence outside the company email system. 11 minutes into my bathroom refuge, my strategy was taking shape, but doubts still lingered. What if reporting led nowhere? What if HR protected the executive over the new hire? I needed backup, something more than just my word against his. I remembered that Jasmine had mentioned other incidents involving Mr. Richardson, though she had been vague about the details. If others had experienced similar treatment, perhaps together our voices would be stronger. And then there were the witnesses, people who had seen me emerge from his office with a red mark on my face and tears in my eyes. Would any of them be willing to corroborate my story? As I considered my options, another thought struck me: legal protection. I quickly searched for employment attorneys in the area and found one with excellent reviews who offered free initial consultations. I sent a brief email explaining the situation and requesting the earliest possible appointment. The bathroom clock now showed 11:35. In just 12 minutes, I had gone from a victim frozen in shock to a woman with a plan. But the most important transformation was happening within me. The fear and humiliation were still there, but they were now overshadowed by determination and a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about my job anymore. This was about justice and ensuring no one else would suffer the same treatment. I stood up, washed my face, and reapplied minimal makeup, leaving the mark on my cheek visible. Then I looked myself in the eye in the mirror. You can do this, I told my reflection. You are stronger than you know. At exactly 11:17 minutes after entering the bathroom, I walked out with my head held high. The woman who had entered that bathroom in tears no longer existed. In her place stood someone new, someone who refused to be a victim, someone who was about to change not just her own circumstances but perhaps the entire toxic culture that had allowed such abuse to thrive. Those 17 minutes had changed everything, and Mr. Richardson had no idea what was coming. When I emerged from the bathroom at 11:40, the office was unnaturally quiet. Several colleagues glanced my way, then quickly averted their eyes. I walked directly to my desk, conscious of the still visible mark on my face, and gathered my laptop and notebook. Misty, are you okay? Jasmine whispered, her face pale with concern. I cannot believe I heard, but I never thought he would, actually. I am not okay, I said honestly, but I will be. Where is Monica's office? Monica Davis was the HR director, according to the company directory. Jasmine's eyes widened. You are going to report him now? Yes, to both questions, I said, my voice steady, despite the churning in my stomach. 4th floor East Wing, she replied. Then, after a moment's hesitation, do you want me to come with you? I considered this briefly. Having a witness might help, but I also needed to do this on my own. Not right now, but I might need your help later. Have there been other incidents with Mr. Richardson that you know of? Jasmine bit her lip, looking around nervously before nodding slightly. Ashley in graphic design quit last month after he threw a coffee mug at her. Missed her head by inches. And Marcus, in accounting, was humiliated in front of clients when Mr. Richardson mocked his stutter. There are others. This information strengthened my resolve. Thank you for telling me. I will be back. The HR director's office was tucked away in a quiet corner of the 4th floor. Monica Davis was a polished woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes that widened slightly when she saw the mark on my cheek. Miss Davis, I need to report a serious incident, I said without preamble. Of course, please sit down, she replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. And call me Monica. I recounted the events exactly as they had happened, keeping my voice as steady and factual as possible. I showed her the photos I had taken of my face and referenced the specific company policies that had been violated. Monica's expression remained carefully neutral throughout my account, but I noticed her taking detailed notes. When I finished, she set down her pen and sighed. First, let me say that what you have described is completely unacceptable and against everything our company stands for. She began, sounding sincere but rehearsed. We take these allegations very seriously. They are not allegations, I corrected firmly. They are facts. Mr. Richardson physically assaulted me in his office less than an hour ago. There are witnesses who saw me immediately after, and the mark on my face is evidence. Monica nodded slowly. I understand. However, we need to follow proper procedures, which means conducting a thorough investigation. These are serious claims against a senior executive. What does that investigation entail? I asked, already sensing a potential attempt to minimize or delay action. We will need statements from anyone who witnessed anything relevant, review any available evidence, and of course speak with Mr. Richardson to get his perspective, she explained. In the meantime, would you feel more comfortable working from home for a few days? The implication was clear. They wanted me out of sight while they handled this internally, but I wasn't going to be brushed aside so easily. No, I said firmly. I have done nothing wrong and have an important client presentation this afternoon. I will continue doing my job. However, I do not feel safe working directly with Mr. Richardson, so I would request temporary reassignment to another supervisor while the investigation is conducted. Monica seemed taken aback by my assertiveness but nodded. That seems reasonable. I will speak with Bradley in Creative Services about supervising your work temporarily. Thank you, I said, rising from my chair. I have documented everything and sent copies to my personal email for my records. I have also consulted with an attorney who specializes in workplace harassment and assault cases, who has advised me of my rights and options. This was a slight stretch of the truth, as I had only sent an inquiry, but Monica did not need to know that. Her expression tightened almost imperceptibly. That is certainly your right, though we hope to resolve this internally to everyone's satisfaction. My satisfaction would include ensuring that Mr. Richardson is held accountable for his actions and that steps are taken to prevent similar incidents in the future, I stated clearly. I will expect regular updates on the investigation process. As I turned to leave, Monica called after me. Misty, one more thing. It would be best not to discuss this matter with other employees while the investigation is ongoing. I paused at the door. I understand the need for discretion. However, if other employees have experienced similar treatment from Mr. Richardson, they deserve to know that they can come forward safely. Back at my desk, I found several concerned messages from colleagues who had witnessed the aftermath of the incident. I responded briefly, thanking them for their concern and confirming that I had reported the matter to HR. During lunch, instead of rehearsing my client presentation as planned, I called the attorney's office and was fortunate to secure a phone consultation for later that afternoon after my presentation. At 12:45, Mr. Richardson emerged from his office for the first time since our confrontation. He stopped short when he saw me at my desk, obviously surprised that I was still there. Our eyes met briefly, and I held his gaze steadily, refusing to look away first. After a moment, he turned and walked in the opposite direction, his body language tense. The client presentation at 1:30 went surprisingly well, perhaps fueled by the adrenaline still coursing through my system. I was hyper-aware of the curious glances from colleagues who had noticed the fading red mark on my cheek, but I channeled all my energy into delivering a compelling pitch. The client seemed impressed and asked insightful questions that I was fully prepared to answer. Immediately after the presentation, I ducked into an empty conference room for my scheduled call with the employment attorney, Patricia Reeves. She listened attentively as I detailed the morning's events, occasionally interrupting with clarifying questions. "You have done everything right so far," she assured me, documenting the incident, immediately reporting it to HR, and maintaining professionalism throughout. "I would advise you to keep a detailed journal of all related events going forward, including any changes in how you are treated by management or colleagues." She explained my legal options, which ranged from filing a police report for assault to pursuing a civil case for hostile work environment and potentially seeking damages. She also warned me about potential retaliation, which, while illegal, was unfortunately common in such cases. Armed with this knowledge, I felt even more confident in my next steps. By the end of the workday, I had filed a formal written complaint with both HR and the company's corporate headquarters, secured statements from 3 colleagues who had witnessed the aftermath of the assault, connected with Ashley, the graphic designer who had quit after her own incident with Mr. Richardson, set up a meeting with the company's general counsel for the following morning, created a secure folder with all documentation related to the incident. As I was packing up to leave, Mr. Richardson approached my desk, his face a careful mask of professional concern. "Misty, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "I do not think that would be appropriate given the circumstances," I replied calmly, continuing to gather my things. "If you need to communicate with me about work matters, please do so by email with HR copied, as Monica has advised." His facade cracked slightly, a flash of anger crossing his features. "You are making a serious mistake," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you really think anyone will choose a new hire over an executive who has brought in millions in new business?" I stood up, meeting his gaze directly. "What I think, Mr. Richardson, is that no one should be above the law or company policy regardless of their position or contribution to the bottom line. Now, if you will excuse me, I have another appointment." As I walked away, I could feel his glare burning into my back. But for the first time since the incident, I felt no fear, only a sense of purpose and the quiet satisfaction of standing my ground. The following morning, I arrived at the office to find an email from Monica in HR requesting my presence at an emergency meeting at 9 o'clock. When I reached the conference room, I was surprised to find not only Monica but also Gerald Thompson, the company's general counsel, and Diane Peters, the chief operating officer. "Please have a seat," Misty, Diane said, gesturing to the chair across from them. Her tone was professional, but wore a stark contrast to the chilly formality radiating from Monica. Gerald cleared his throat. "We have reviewed your complaint and spoken with Mr. Richardson about yesterday's incident. He has a different recollection of events." "I am not surprised," I replied evenly. "What is his version?" "He claims there was a heated discussion about your responsibilities, but denies any physical contact," Monica said. "He suggests that you may have misinterpreted his gestures, or perhaps exaggerated the interaction for attention." I had anticipated this. Calmly, I opened my laptop and pulled up the emails I had received that morning from 2 colleagues who had heard the distinctive sound of the slap through Mr. Richardson's office door, followed by his raised voice. I turned the screen toward them. "These statements corroborate my account," I said. "Additionally, at least 5 people witnessed the mark on my face immediately after, and I have photographic evidence time-stamped minutes after the incident." Diane leaned forward, her expression serious. "Misty, I want to assure you that we are taking this very seriously. Mr. Richardson has been placed on administrative leave pending a thorough investigation. We have also learned that you are not the first to report concerning behavior." This was progress, but I remained cautious. "I appreciate that. However, I should inform you that I have filed a police report regarding the assault. This is not just a workplace issue, but a legal one." Gerald winced slightly at this news, but nodded. "That is your right. We would like to resolve this matter as efficiently and fairly as possible. What outcome are you hoping for?" "Justice and change," I answered without hesitation. Mr. Richardson should face appropriate consequences for his actions, and the company needs to implement better protections for employees facing harassment or abuse. The meeting ended with assurances that the investigation would proceed quickly and that my position was secure. However, as I walked back to my desk, I began to notice the first signs of backlash. A small group of executives who had been close with Mr. Richardson gave me cold stares as I passed. At the coffee machine, I overheard someone mutter, "Some people will do anything for attention clearly meant for me to hear." My team meeting was awkward, with several colleagues seeming uncomfortable around me as if I had suddenly become radioactive. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the office about the police report, and the division in responses became even more pronounced. Some colleagues went out of their way to avoid me, while others made small gestures of support, a touch on the shoulder or a supportive smile in passing. Jasmine plopped down beside me in the break room, abandoning any pretense of subtlety. "You actually filed a police report. That is badass." "It felt necessary," I said, picking at my salad. "But not everyone seems to think so." "Forget them," Jasmine dismissed with a wave. "They are just afraid of rocking the boat. But listen, there is something you should know. After you reported everything yesterday, 3 other people went to HR with their own complaints about Richardson." This news surprised and heartened me. "Really, who?" "Marcus from accounting, for one. Remember the stutter incident I told you about? He finally reported it formally. And Sandra from legal filed a sexual harassment complaint she had been sitting on for months. Plus some intern whose name I do not know," Jasmine continued. "It is like you opened the floodgates." As the day progressed, the landscape of allies and opponents became clearer. Upper management maintained a careful neutrality, treating me with professional courtesy, but keeping their distance. Mr. Salmon, Richardson's closest colleagues, were openly hostile, spreading rumors that I was exaggerating or had manufactured the incident to cover up poor performance. But there was also unexpected support. Bradley from Creative Services, my temporary supervisor, went out of his way to publicly praise my work on the Luxe skincare presentation. Several women from different departments stopped by my desk to quietly share their own stories of uncomfortable encounters with Mr. Richardson. And to my surprise, Robert Finch, one of the company's founding partners, now semi-retired, sent me a brief email that simply read, "Courage is contagious. Thank you." That evening, as I was leaving the building, I found Ashley, the former graphic designer, waiting for me in the lobby. We had connected briefly by email, but this was our first face-to-face meeting. "I had to come see you in person," she said as we walked together toward the subway. "When you reached out, I could hardly believe someone was finally standing up to him." Over coffee at a nearby cafe, Ashley shared her own experience with Mr. Richardson, how his verbal abuse had escalated to throwing objects when displeased, culminating in the coffee mug incident that had prompted her resignation. She had considered reporting him, but feared no one would believe her against his word. "I blamed myself for not being stronger," she admitted. "But watching you fight back makes me realize the problem was never with me." "It never was," I assured her. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement about your experience? It would strengthen the case significantly." Ashley hesitated, fear briefly flickering across her face before nodding firmly. "Yes, it is time." By the end of the week, the initial shock had given way to a strange new normal. Working under Bradley was a refreshing change, with clear communication and reasonable expectations replacing Mr. Richardson's volatile demands. The police investigation was proceeding, with several colleagues having given statements corroborating my account. The company investigation was also underway, with an independent firm brought in to ensure impartiality. However, the emotional toll was becoming harder to ignore. I found myself jumping at sudden noises, checking over my shoulder in the parking garage, replaying the confrontation in my dreams. My parents and sister called daily, concerned about my well-being, offering to come stay with me for support. "You do not have to carry this alone," Kelly reminded me during one late-night call when the weight of it all had reduced me to tears. "I know," I acknowledged, "but in a way I am not alone anymore. There is this whole community of people who have been hurt or silenced who are finding their voices now." And it was true. What had begun as my personal stand against abuse had catalyzed something larger. A group of employees had formed an informal support network, sharing experiences and advocating for stronger anti-harassment policies. I had been invited to join their next meeting, where they hoped to draft recommendations for systemic changes at Elite. The weekend brought a much-needed respite from the intensity at the office. I spent Saturday with Kelly, who had driven 2 hours to take me to a spa day she had insisted on. As we relaxed in plush robes between treatments, she studied me carefully. "You look different," she observed. "The bruise is completely gone now," I said, touching my cheek where Mr. Richardson's handprint had faded. "That is not what I mean." Kelly shook her head. "You carry yourself differently. More. I do not know present. Like you are fully occupying your space now." I considered this. Maybe it is because I finally stopped making myself smaller to accommodate someone else's bad behavior. "Whatever it is," Kelly smiled, "it looks good on you." The third week after the incident brought significant developments. On Monday morning, I was called into a meeting with Diane Peters, the COO, and the company's entire executive leadership team minus the CEO, who was conferenced in from London. "The independent investigation has been completed," Diane began once we were all seated. "The findings were conclusive." James Whitaker, the CEO, spoke from the large screen at the end of the table. "Misty, first, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced. Our company failed you, and that is unacceptable." I nodded, maintaining my composure though my heart was racing. "Thank you. What happens now?" "Mr. Richardson's employment has been terminated effective immediately," Diane stated. "The investigation found substantial evidence supporting your account of physical assault as well as a pattern of abusive behavior toward multiple employees." While this was the outcome I had hoped for, hearing it stated so officially was overwhelming. I took a moment to absorb the news before responding. "I appreciate the thorough investigation and appropriate action." James continued from the screen. "This incident has made it clear that we have serious gaps in our workplace culture and reporting systems. We would like to form a task force to review and strengthen our policies, and we hope you would consider being part of it." "I would be interested." "Yes," I replied carefully. "What specifically would this task force address?" Gerald Thompson, the general counsel, outlined a comprehensive review of harassment policies, reporting mechanisms, manager training, and accountability systems. The company was clearly taking this seriously, perhaps motivated by both genuine concern and the desire to mitigate legal exposure. As the meeting concluded, Diane pulled me aside. "There is one more thing. The police investigation is proceeding, and Mr. Richardson may face criminal charges. The company will fully cooperate with law enforcement." That afternoon, the news of Mr. Richardson's termination spread quickly through the office. The official announcement was carefully worded, citing violations of company policy and professional standards without specific details. However, everyone knew the real reason. The responses from colleagues were mixed but largely supportive. Those who had been hesitant to engage with me now approached with congratulations or expressions of respect. Several shared that they felt safer at work knowing that even executives would be held accountable for abusive behavior. Not everyone was pleased, of course. Mr. Richardson's allies were notably subdued, some openly resentful. I overheard comments about overreaction and career suicide, but they no longer bothered me. I knew I had done the right thing regardless of others' opinions. The media eventually caught wind of the story. A local business journal ran an article titled, "Elite Marketing Executive Terminated Following Assault Allegation," which was picked up by several industry publications. While my name was not included in the initial reporting, it did not take long for journalists to reach out for comments. On the advice of my attorney, I provided a brief statement, acknowledging the incident but declining further details while the legal process was ongoing. Patricia, my lawyer, had coached me carefully on handling media interest, emphasizing the importance of maintaining professionalism and focusing on systemic change rather than personal vindication. 2 days after Mr. Richardson's termination, his attorney reached out to mine with a settlement offer aimed at avoiding criminal charges. The terms included financial compensation, a non-disclosure agreement, and my agreement to drop the police complaint. "What do you think I should do?" I asked Patricia during our meeting to discuss the offer. She laid out the options objectively. A settlement would provide guaranteed compensation and avoid a potentially lengthy and stressful legal process. However, it would also prevent you from speaking about the incident publicly, and Mr. Richardson would not face criminal consequences. I considered this carefully. The financial offer was substantial enough to pay off my student loans and establish a comfortable emergency fund. The prospect of avoiding a prolonged legal battle was tempting. but the non-disclosure agreement felt wrong, like burying the truth for convenience. I do not want the money if it means silence, I decided. This was never about financial gain. It was about justice and preventing this from happening to others. Patricia nodded, seeming to approve of my choice. I will communicate that the offer is declined. We will proceed with the criminal complaint. The decision brought both relief and renewed anxiety. The police investigation would mean interviews, potential court appearances, and continued public scrutiny, but it also meant standing firm in my commitment to accountability. At work, the promised changes began to take shape. The newly formed Policy Review Task Force, which included myself, HR representatives, and employees from various departments, met twice weekly to develop improved systems for reporting harassment and abuse. The company hired a respected consulting firm specializing in workplace culture to conduct training sessions for all managers with special emphasis on recognizing and preventing abusive behaviors. In a particularly meaningful development, Robert Finch, the semi-retired founding partner, who had emailed his support, became actively involved in the company's cultural transformation. During an all-hands meeting, he spoke candidly about the responsibility of leadership to ensure a safe working environment. What happened to Misty and others was a failure on multiple levels, he acknowledged openly. But her courage in coming forward has given us the opportunity to build something better, something that truly reflects our core values. The criminal case against Mr. Richardson proceeded slowly but steadily. He was formally charged with assault, and a preliminary hearing was scheduled. His attorney continued to push for a settlement, offering increasingly generous terms, but I remained firm in my decision to see the legal process through. During this period, I received an unexpected email from a producer at a national morning news program. They were preparing a segment on workplace harassment and wanted to feature my story as an example of successfully holding powerful abusers accountable. After careful consideration and discussions with Patricia, I agreed to a carefully structured interview that would not compromise the ongoing legal case. The segment aired 6 weeks after the incident, with my face partially obscured to maintain some privacy. I spoke about the experience, factually emphasizing not the details of the assault, but the importance of reporting abuse and the positive changes that could come from standing up to intimidation. The response was overwhelming. My inbox filled with messages from people sharing their own stories of workplace abuse, thanking me for giving them courage, asking for advice on their own situations. What had begun as a personal stand for dignity had somehow evolved into something much larger, a small but significant contribution to a broader conversation about power, accountability, and workplace safety. 3 months after that life-changing Tuesday when Mr. Richardson slapped me, I found myself in a very different place, both professionally and personally. The physical mark on my face had faded within days, but the internal transformation had continued to develop and deepen. The healing process had not been linear. There were days when I questioned everything, when the stress of the ongoing legal proceedings and occasional hostile glances from Richardson loyalists left me exhausted and doubting. There were nights when I replayed the confrontation in my dreams, waking with my heart racing and my cheek tingling with phantom pain. But those moments became less frequent as I built a stronger support system. The informal employee group that had formed in the wake of the incident evolved into an officially recognized employee resource group focused on workplace respect and safety. We met bi-weekly, sometimes just to share experiences and provide mutual support, other times to work on specific policy recommendations for management. Ashley, the former graphic designer, had become a close friend. After providing her statement for both the company investigation and police case, she had found the courage to re-enter the job market and secured a position at a smaller, more supportive agency. We regularly met for coffee to check in on each other's progress. "I never thought I would feel excited about work again," she confessed during one of our meetings. "After what happened with Richardson, I was ready to abandon my career entirely. Watching you stand your ground helped me remember my own worth." My relationship with colleagues at Elite had evolved as well. The initial division between supporters and skeptics had largely dissolved as the evidence against Mr. Richardson became irrefutable. Even some who had initially doubted my account approached with quiet apologies or tacit acknowledgments through small kindnesses. Professionally, I found myself in an unexpected new role. In addition to my marketing responsibilities, I had been asked to co-lead the company-wide initiative to revamp harassment training and reporting procedures. Diane Peters, the COO, had been impressed by my contributions to the task force and offered me the opportunity to make a more significant impact. "You have a unique perspective," she had explained. "You experienced the failure of our systems firsthand, but you also understand our business and culture from the inside. That combination is invaluable." The new role came with increased visibility and a modest raise, but more importantly, it gave me the chance to transform a painful experience into meaningful change. Working alongside HR professionals and external consultants, I helped develop clear definitions of unacceptable behavior, multiple pathways for reporting concerns, and transparent investigation procedures with built-in accountability. The legal proceedings against Mr. Richardson had reached a resolution as well. Faced with multiple witnesses and irrefutable evidence, he had eventually accepted a plea deal that included community service, mandatory anger management therapy, and a permanent mark on his record. While some might have preferred harsher consequences, I found a measure of peace in knowing that there had been formal accountability for his actions. More significant than any external changes, however, was the internal transformation I had undergone. The woman who had entered Mr. Richardson's office that Tuesday, eager to please and afraid to rock the boat, no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood her own worth, who recognized that no job or paycheck was worth sacrificing her dignity, and who had found her voice not just for herself but for others who remained silenced. This growth did not come without cost. There were friendships that did not survive the scrutiny and pressure of the situation. There were professional opportunities potentially lost due to being labeled as difficult in certain circles. There was the emotional toll of becoming, however temporarily, the face of workplace harassment within our industry. Yet these costs paled in comparison to what I had gained: self-respect, authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than convenience, and the profound satisfaction of knowing I had remained true to my values under pressure. One unexpected outcome was the mentorship role I found myself stepping into. Junior employees, particularly young women, began seeking me out for advice on handling difficult workplace situations. I took these conversations seriously, sharing what I had learned, while being careful not to position myself as having all the answers. The most important thing I learned, I told a nervous intern who was dealing with inappropriate comments from a client, is that your dignity is non-negotiable. Jobs come and go, but how you allow others to treat you sets a pattern for your entire career. 6 months after the incident, Elite Marketing held its annual company retreat. The theme, fittingly, was Rebuilding Trust, with sessions focused on communication, respect, and collaborative problem-solving. During the closing dinner, James Whitaker, the CEO, asked me to share some thoughts about our journey over the past months. Standing before colleagues who had witnessed my most vulnerable moment and subsequent transformation, I felt a surge of gratitude mixed with lingering traces of the pain that had brought us to this point. 6 months ago, I made a choice in a moment of crisis. I began. Not the choice to report what happened, though that was important, but the more fundamental choice to value my own humanity over someone else's convenience or comfort. That choice cost me something, as difficult choices always do. But it also gave me something invaluable: the knowledge that I am stronger than I knew, and that my voice matters. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of those who had supported me from the beginning, those who had come around more slowly, and even those few who still harbored doubts. We all face moments that define us, moments when we must choose between what is easy and what is right. My hope for all of us is not that we never face such moments, but that when we do, we find the courage to honor our own worth and the worth of those around us. Because ultimately, a workplace is not just about what we produce together, but how we treat each other in the process. The applause that followed felt less like personal validation and more like a collective commitment to the values I had articulated. A shared recognition that we were all responsible for creating the environment in which we spent so much of our lives. As I reflect now on that pivotal day and the 17 minutes that changed everything, I am reminded of something my grandmother used to say. It is not what happens to you that defines you, but how you respond to it. In those 17 minutes in the bathroom, tears streaming down my face, and my cheeks still stinging from the slap, I made a decision to respond with dignity and courage rather than fear and silence. That decision reshaped not just that moment, but all the moments that followed. I often wonder what would have happened if I had made a different choice, if I had wiped away my tears, apologized to Mr. Richardson, and tried to make myself smaller and less troublesome. The job might have been easier in the short term, but at what cost to my spirit? How many more boundary violations would have followed? How many other employees would have continued to suffer in silence? There is a freedom that comes with standing in your truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable or inconvenient. It is the freedom to look yourself in the eye at the end of each day and know that whatever else happened, you remained true to your own values. If you have ever faced a similar moment of choice between dignity and comfort, between speaking up and staying silent, I hope my story gives you courage. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. And sometimes those 17 minutes of clarity, when you decide that enough is enough, can transform not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences with standing up for yourself in difficult situations. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message of empowerment, please share this video with them. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and you deserve to be treated with respect in every aspect of your life.